Hello. Yes, this is on. Hi, you guys. How you doing, all you beautiful Bedouins? I just wanted to grab you for a second before we started this episode. This is, by the way, congratulations to all involved, and thank you for coming back and listening to the unofficial first episode. The second episode, it's going officially as episode 2, but since we had the pilot, that's the reason. But this is technically the first real episode because it's not just 12 minutes long. I just wanted to start with giving you this little short preamble as to kind of set the scene and give an idea of how things are going to be going on and some of my concerns moving forward. So, one of the things you're going to notice is that there's going to be two forms of episodes, or two forms of two formats. There's going to be the interview style, so that's me bantering back and forth with any number of guys or girls or things that just happened to walk into the studio. And we're going to be just using long form conversation. It's going to be compared to the pilot, which is more of a monologue-y / ranty thing. It's going to be less produced, I would say, so less sound effects, or with this one there's no sound effects at all, and I'd prefer keeping it that way because it tends to be a lot more natural, much more honest, and no need to do as heavy a job on edits either. Anywho, yeah, as we go along, you're going to notice the differences between those two formats, and I'm open to new ones, so I'm going to be tinkering around with different kind of little segments and styles to kind of make this interesting and creative. So you guys are also part of this process. Give me your feedback, give me your opinions, your comments, and any ideas you might have. I am looking for help in producing the show, especially on the mixer. I've got offers from some people who want to help. So if you want to help in any way and get involved, just let me know. It is so far a one-man job as far as at least the recording and the studio work. For everything else, I've had which is the second thing I want to get to, the most immense amount of support from friends and family. Big shout out to Hiram Abjouda, my friend. He's amazing. He designed a lot of what's going on in the studio, the table, and how the mics clamp on, everything else. He has great work. Architect, carpenter, Renaissance man galore. He's making his own, or has made his own indie game from Bahrain. So he's a Bahraini who's made a indie game. Check it out. #LemonsMustDie or @LemonsMustDie. Find him on Instagram and Steam. I think it's greenlit, so you can go look it up. I also want to thank Tariq Omar. He has been amazing. Captain T. You can follow him on @CaptainT if I'm not mistaken either. He's been responsible for the music you've heard on the show. So that intro track, that's sweet and hopefully one day copyrighted. And when I have my own team of lawyers to just sue people for remixing that song one day. But yeah, in the meantime, feel free to mix away, guys. But I thank him for that and for a lot of help on giving me advice on the mixer and the mic stuff. I also want to thank my beautiful wife, Sheda. She has been the all-in-one marketing team as far as helping me brand the whole thing, getting the logo done, getting a lot of the graphics done. If you ever see any crappy graphics that have come up, especially on the Instagram posts that I put on to announce a new episode, that is definitely not her. That is me, and she likes to make that clear. So thank you for being my rock and for dealing with all the anxiety just launching this whole thing has caused. Did I forget something? Oh yeah, the censorship stuff. Yeah, you guys are going to notice that there's a lot of bleeps, a lot of self-censoring bleeps, which goes against my very DNA. I was really struggling hard with the idea of should I be bleeping and not bleeping. And mostly because if we were living maybe 6 years ago, there was never any issue with monetization through YouTube and advertisements and whether sponsors enjoy or to be fair, don't enjoy the fact that people say bad and naughty words. So since that happened, it's made me consider my platforms where most people will be listening to the show. From what I've seen, most of you guys are watching through YouTube. So for now, I'm going to just keep the bleeps there. Trust me, it is hell on earth to actually go through the whole recording and freaking look for every small whispery that Ghazi just let's rip. And or I do as well. You're going to hear me saying a lot. And I think there was one point where I said convergence about 16 times in the show. I wish I could have bleeped that out just for the awkwardness, the cringe-worthiness. So yeah, if you spot an expletive or something that I didn't catch, props to you. I'll find a way to give you a giveaway or a cookie or something or some Steam rewards or whatever it is. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in again and for being a part of this. Hopefully in the future, if we can, we'll figure out a way where you can support me directly and avoid the whole YouTube stuff, the YouTube monetization crap. But in the meantime, your support matters, and shares and likes and subscribes and hitting that little bell button on the YouTube channel right next to the subscribe button. So thank you guys, and enjoy the show.
Warning, the following statements, opinions, and humor expressed by Khalid do not represent that of a competent intellectual or, for that matter, indicative of a mentally stable human being. Any attempt at taking these comments too seriously will be met with a thundering meh, lolcat memes, and years upon years of emotional eating. That being said, Khalid is unrelentingly driven to providing you the most valuable commodity available to any new podcast, a pompous use of big words, deafening awkward silences, and the pursuit of annoying unspecific small truths that kind of help yet somehow don't.
Hello and welcome to Bedouin Banter. I'm your host Khalid Al-Dosri, again coming to you from the island kingdom of Bahrain. And today I have one of my special friends and colleagues that I've had the pleasure of knowing for almost a year and a half, I think now.
I think so, something like that.
Something to that extent, yeah. It's please share in my joy in welcoming my friend Ghazi AlShehabi, a journalist here in Bahrain and another geek aficionado, lover of Warhammer 40k and all kinds of sci-fi Apologies if that got a little bit too graphic or if I had a little bit of mic spike right there. I think even the mic got offended for a second, wanted to pull back. I don't want anything to do with this, man. Just leave me alone.
David, this is supposed to be a clean podcast.
Yeah.
Good, family values and all that stuff.
Not today, no. Not today at all. Let me pull back on some of that gain as well. I feel like I'm, like I said to some of you before, I'm still starting to learn how the tech stuff works, and it's a bit of a trial and error thing. So hopefully we'll get there.
He's just messing around with a bunch of knobs and things. He's used to playing with his knob.
It's there. I have many knobs to play with. A lot of them require lubrication as well. It's what happens when you buy Behringer. No, Behringer, this is not a slight on you. I'm just saying, all right?
That's a bit of a, I think that's enough derailing for now.
Yeah, a little bit. So, Ghazi, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in Bahrain, and what's your background?
My background, in terms of education, I've studied English language and literature at UOB, and I've been a journalist for about a year and a half now. And aside from that, I like to consider myself a full-time nerd and a part-time poet. And I've been doing I've been involved in different types of aspects of nerd culture, you could say.
Yeah, and that's somehow found its way into your job and into entertainment.
I try to inject as much of it into my job. Whenever there's any sort of geek event, I try to plug it.
Yeah.
I try to push it to the newspaper, and then they're like, okay, fine, do it. Whatever.
Exactly, yeah. And ironically enough, I didn't even know this about Ghazi when we first met, because part of we met actually in the same group in the amateur theater society that I'm a part of, the Manama Theater Club. Woohoo! Shout out to you guys. And it was ironic because the first time we met, she's already laughing because there's probably a video of this out there somewhere, and some of you are going to just hunt this down.
Some very beautiful blackmail material.
Some very beautiful blackmail material that is indicative of some of my darker sides. There was, I don't know if those of you not familiar, the Brits just enjoy drag.
They love that stuff.
They love that stuff. It's just to no end. So
every British actor has done it at some point or another.
So we had what's known as the Dame Off, and the Dame Off is volunteers and people that kind of have and good humor and just joy and fun, which is you just dress up guys in women's clothing. and you just go out and put your best skit forward, your best leg forward. In my case, a very hairy leg forward.
It was that was the first time we've ever met, and like a week before that, I was doing a production. It was like a mock Shakespeare thing where I was in drag for the show. So
there was a lot of like common ground there.
Yes,
we had
like before, like any words were spoken.
Nothing.
We connected.
Yeah, we did on that ground. So he is a bit of a wordsmith. You will see that come up in the different shows and stuff, and we're gonna be talking about a lot of the commonalities there. So Ghazi, getting back to kind of like the topics at hand, I wanted to ask you about your influence. Like, let the people know what is it? Why has geek culture been so relevant in the Middle East? What is it about it? Like, I specifically have my own story from Saudi, and my theories about why it spread so rampantly. But for you in Bahrain, Yani, what were your influences and why did they affect you so much growing up here?
Let me tell you something. Being a kid in, let's say, the early 90s here, if you're not into sports, you don't have friends.
Yeah, that's
you're
right.
You're not into sports, you're not into cars, you're not into that stuff.
Which team are you? Barcelona, Chelsea, what are you? Something to that line.
You don't, there's nothing for you to do. So, like, I don't remember exactly what was the catalyst, because every time I think about it, it's a different thing. One time I think it was the first time I played a video game was Crash Bandicoot.
Right, yeah.
From the PSX.
That was your first game?
It was like the first game that I finished start to finish. Like, I've played like stuff on the NES, Mario and Duck Hunt, but I've never...
Before that you were a quitter, is what you're saying. You just abandoned all those.
Like, I would go to my friend's house and they would have it. I didn't have a console back then. Yeah.
All right.
So like I would like hang out and try to play as much as I could at their place.
When was this? Is this like late 80s or like early 90s?
Early
almost?
90s.
Early, yeah. But was it like the games that you were playing? Because just to inform some of our viewers, there's going to be a lot of times where I'm going to say late 80s, even though we were born like around 85 something. I think you're a bit younger than me. But a lot for us, especially in the 90s, if you're part of a developing country, there was a lot of games and movies that would show up delayed to us. So maybe
very late.
Very late. So it would be like 3 years later, 4 years later than anybody else. So for us, a lot of the 80s stuff and a lot of the 80s games, especially the late 80s and early 90s, came about, I think, around 95, 96, something like that.
That was like 96 was a big year.
Yeah.
Thing is, like, I never got the Sega Genesis. I never got an NES. So I've never played any of the Zelda games, any like of the Sonic games, other than like the times I would, crash at a friend's house and be like, "Oh, what's this?"
Right. Yeah. That was the thing, though. That's kind of what connected people as well. The whole getting together.
Yeah. You go over to a friend's house and you play video games together, and on like split screen, whatever. Something that is very sorely missing in today's multiplayer world.
Yeah, a lot of people do have a little fanatical relationship with like what happened to actually just chilling at home with your friends. Whether it be the old Red Alert games, which is a strategy game if you're not familiar with it. It used to be on the PlayStation, and I think it was PS1 used to have the first ever console link or the PS link or something like that. And me and my cousin would just set up the wire cable from our PS to his PS, 2 TV screens, and play that game like for hours on end. And it was the thing that got people together. It didn't matter what background you were, if you were into cars, you were into anything else. In the Gulf, it was kind of like,
Yeah, if you had a console, then you had some friends.
You had some friends. That's true. Yeah.
But for me, the first major console that I had was the PS1.
Yeah.
And the Crash series was what I remember spending the most time on. And other times when I think back, like I try to pinpoint where it all started. I remember, going to local, like the bookstore, Josh and Mall, and seeing a Spider-Man comic. It was like, "Ooh, what's this?"
Right.
And ever since then, I've been reading comics, well, on and off. For a long time.
Interesting that you say that, because my background as well, it started Bahraini's Josh and Mall is your bookstore. That's for those of you that don't know from the other parts of the world. It's kind of like your Barnes and Noble here. It started off with it. So ours in Saudi was Jarir. And I think what drew me was the censorship. I personally loved them because my mom and other people would just buy them. My mom was obsessed with like Disney comic books and Archie and stuff like that. And automatically I'd just go, and when she'd buy, an Archie or like a Donald Duck or something, I'd just go buy, Spider-Man and Superman and all that. And there was never any continuity. Like there would be like...
They were like months apart.
My God.
Like you'd be lucky if you get like 3 issues in a row that are related to each other.
Right, yeah.
And they're like always like, behind by a year from the actual continuity.
That's so true, yeah. And I don't know if you guys got any of this, but we had the censorship issues as well, where they'd either rip off a whole page when it was...
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, there's like these levels to censorship in Saudi where they'd mark out all the like the titties, the fleshy bits, all the little like, how dare you look at this, the harami bits, don't look at that, right?
Or Wonder Woman.
Please, no elbows and ankles.
Yeah, I never thought I'd see Wonder Woman in a hijab. But...
Yeah, but no, she's like, I like that the hijabs that they had in the comic books were actually conservative. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't like draw on a headscarf. They would leave her hair.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think at least our censors or whoever they were actually a little bit closer to the moderate side than they were to the extreme conservative. They're like, see, we're understanding. You can see her face.
You'd think that guy like got the gig so he could get like firsthand like the comics early.
I guess,
and then like he would read them, have fun, and there's like, okay, fine, time to scribble.
So just like this is where I can scribble, this is where I can't. This is where, because he did have degrees. I felt like whoever had that job was trying to make it seem like I'm a professional. I'm trying hard to maintain this level of like concern for your well-being, and it even go to a point where sometimes it gets so markered out that the ink would stick to the next page and rip. I hated that. But some of them would actually be very considerate and just not even do that. Just rip out the whole page.
That's very nice of them.
That's very nice of them. Where they're going, you know what? This whole page has just gone wrong, so screw it.
Another like big influence, what I would think like the first big sci-fi series that got me into reading in like more than just, nerd culture, but actual like reading as a kid,
right,
was the Animorphs series.
Animorphs, was that the Transformers, right?
Those are the kids who would turn into animals, and like you'd have like little pictures in the corner. If you flip through the book, you could see like a kid turn into like a squid or like a bear or something.
Oh God, this is flashbacks to some Kool-Aid commercials back in the 90s. I think this was the MTV generation, I'm pretty sure. Like
I could imagine.
It was Animorphs. I can't remember what that was, but I'm confusing
like
that.
Animorphs, Goosebumps, those were like the big major like 90s young adult children's series,
right?
That had a little bit of an edge to them.
Yeah,
and they were more imaginative than your standard young adult or kids books. They're not even young adult books. They were like kids books.
Do you think that stuff like I feel like it doesn't exist anymore, but I kind of hated it at the time. Felt like when you're rebelling as a little emo brat, you feel like well, I didn't actually say "f*** the system" at the time. I didn't have the balls to say it. I did feel like I miss it now. That feeling of like this is the thing that doesn't make any sense to our culture. Let me try to translate, figure it out. Why people hate it? Why people love it? Yeah. Do you feel like there is this equivalent to that today? Do you feel like kids have attachments and obsessions that are misunderstood? I know Minecraft is one of them, but
like there's always backlash to whatever is popular, right?
Right.
There's always be that group of people who hate whatever is trending.
Yeah.
And no matter how innocent or how silly it might be, anything, there are people who are demonizing fidget spinners.
Yeah. Just to explain a second for everybody listening. A lot of the times when things get really trendy, really popular, like I remember Pokemon that happened as well. Oh God, they banned it in Saudi, or they tried to ban it. They basically wanted to convince people that Pokemon was some Zionist conspiracy. They wanted to make Muslims gamble. I you not. Look, this is always the case. No matter what it is, it's popular. They will
try to demonize it for whatever reason.
Yes, we've had fake news. If fake news is popular now, we've had fake news for like 30 years, man.
Fake news hipsters.
Fake news hipsters, way ahead of everybody else. I think it was you that shared it the other day. Midget spinners. Wait. I think the fidget spinners. So you shared it, I think, or somebody else shared it. It was they showed like the trifecta.
Yes, it was like it's like some sort of like the Holy Trinity.
Yeah,
and it's supposed to make kids turn Christian all of a sudden.
This was hilarious to me, the idea, because this is where critical thinking kicked in for me and made me like doubt some stuff. I was thinking, why the hell would anybody go to these lengths to kind of fool us?
Then you have to ask yourself the question is, what if this is just some stupid troll thing? Like, how serious was the person? Because, the troll culture and like, hey, being overtly silly and overtly like what's the word, sarcastic or facetious,
Right.
it's become so hard to tell the difference between what's seriously crazy and what's seriously mocking, or like what's satirical anymore, because it's often that the serious stuff is even more like, it's even crazier and out of, insane, out of fucking nowhere than the satirical stuff.
You think it's you listen to it thinking this has to be bullshit. This is a joke.
Yeah.
But somewhere out there, people believe this.
Yes.
Like we have, and I can't remember where I read this, but that there was a rife problem that conspiracy theories have always been something that was just systematically kind of infesting the Middle East, because we enjoy it, the story, the rumors, the theory of it, you know what I mean? And especially the fidget spinner, when I see it, and the idea behind it is, okay, Christians or Jews or Zionists, whatever it is, they're trying to make Muslims do something without realizing they're doing it. They're trying to taint and corrupt your soul.
They're trying to control the children.
They're trying to control the children, brainwash them into thinking that, they should be Christian. But here's the thing. How are you worshiping without knowing? Is there a point system out there?
Before any of that is like, how much like logical gymnastics do you have to do to connect those two things?
Yeah. Why not just say, I think the straight up propaganda would be better, do you know what I mean? Than wasting your time with that. I remember
straight up saying that it's it's being marketed as a toy now.
Yeah.
It's stopped being something that people use for stress relief, and it's become a trend, and it's no longer it no longer serves its original purpose. And now people are mass marketing things as making it into a business.
Right.
And it's been distilled from all of its original purpose.
Right.
That is a more logical explanation, more logical way to hate something than saying, it's supposed to mind control your kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't get it. It's like, I remember once I was thinking about this, Ghazi, on that point. If you're going to go to conspiracy theories of that length, out there somewhere, somebody that's kind of designing these things to look like, the Trinity, or designing it to look like, I remember one time it was Coca-Cola, where they'd say if you put Coca-Cola in the mirror and it would reverse, it would read in Arabic, "No God, no Muhammad." Right? I remember this clearly. At the time, somebody made a joke. I can't remember if it was a friend or a teacher that said, well, you'd have to be drunk in the first place to see that anyway. So you're a sinner, goddammit. But if that really is the case, let's assume that people actually out there do manage to fabricate and implant these hidden messages, right? There has to be a graphics department out there somewhere, because it's not just the guys that are committing the assassinations and everything else.
There has to be a marketing department, an arts department. There's it's an entire infrastructure of people, and it's a very well organized. They got triangles everywhere.
Oh my God.
Triangles for days. That's my favorite thing.
I can promise you there's no way they can let this slide, because if you are that much of a genius to be able to hide a penis in Lincoln's face, you'd be brilliant, because you're not only doing art, you're trying to manipulate and send out a message. And I'm telling you, I'm married to a graphic designer. They will not shut up about how good their work is. They have to let you know how important the work is.
Hey, if Disney movies could get away with putting sex jokes and penises in almost all of their original... I remember the Little Mermaid cover. It's a giant dong there.
Well, but that's more plausible to me, because it's an artist who's gonna go brag about it later. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, because if you put
a penis in the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, exactly. If you're putting an Easter egg in there, that's your ego, right? So you can't keep the secret. The fact that you're putting it in there is your ego in the first place. So at some point you're gonna go, I did that, because if the whole graphics department, let's say maybe 20 guys, 30 guys right in the middle of the Pentagon somewhere that are trying to spread this crusader mentality to the Middle East, one of them has to be a prima donna. If you're getting the best of the best, one of them has to be fucked up in the head and dramatic as all hell, right? So
there's gonna be a big coming out party. It was me.
It was me.
I did 9/11.
I made it. I faked the moon landings, motherfucker. That was me. I doctored those photos.
The moon landing crew,
right?
Is they have to be assassinated, right? Because no one who worked that hard to get all that shit to look that good would shut up about it. This is no longer the day and age of Van Gogh dying without selling a single painting.
That's
no,
right.
This is the day and age of spin where everyone's like trying to sell you something.
True.
Everyone's trying to sell you something.
Everybody's trying to sell you. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody's got a tactical mind about how to get ahead and how to make themselves better, right? And especially if you're talking about any creative type, there's no way I would believe for a second that even if you have the most organized kind of like group of people and the most professional, it's the story of humanity. The story of humanity could be summed up in one dicking it up for everybody else. That is really the case. You know this. If you're working at a corporation, if you got a job somewhere, it's always that one who brings everybody else down, and you just take it as part of life. This is just the thing I have to deal with.
Day.
Yeah, if we didn't have to deal with this shit, we'd be robots.
You know, back in the 1940s, that was a dude named Hitler out of Germany.
Yeah.
Now it's a guy called Drumpf.
Strum, like something like that.
Something like that. He's got like these weird orange skin.
Looks like a pumpkin as well. Yeah.
Man, that was a bit of a tangent.
Yeah, it was. It was a nice one though. It just shows you our own frustration with like if people are sick of conspiracy theories now, we've been dealing with them for fucking years. So let's get back to something a bit more about the region and kind of our own backstory here. For me, like I said, for me when I started, I think especially my geek background, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't find a lot of commonality with in Saudi. But the one thing that kind of brought, especially like, you know, a lot of people are into anime or they were console players. I was more of a PC guy. But it happened later on because of some of the influences I had from abroad. And I used a lot of gaming analogy to kind of, you know, share common ground with people I never expected I'd be friends with. Mm-hmm. In that sense that, you know, for a lot of people, I may be a chicken nugget. You might be a chicken nugget, right?
What? Me?
Yeah. What?
I am insulted, sir. I will not be sit here and be talked down to.
You talked to like the Western baby. You've been poisoned by Western influences, sir. You are no longer part of the culture. But yeah,
I have never been part of the culture. What are you on about?
There's no culture. Jesus, I can't. Oh, Jesus, there you
go.
See, there you go. People
go.
are gonna hold that against me for the rest of my life. I know that for a fact. Okay, somebody's gonna be like, see, he mentioned Jesus, and then somebody else is gonna be saying, well, Jesus is a prophet in the religion, and this can go on back and forth. Be like, yeah,
dude, we said from the beginning we were not gonna.
I know. No, just stay out of religion for a while. Okay, we want people to actually enjoy the show. So
we want to get, you know, the cool people, then we can, you know, go for the insane demographic.
Yes, that's right. So if I'm going to speak just about myself as a human being who had to like kind of connect outside of my bubble and, you know, find some form of escapism that made sense in my life. A lot of the times it came from the most unexpected sources. So I had friends that we played Tekken with that were metalheads in Saudi. I had friends that were RTS lovers that souped up their cars. I had, you know, the most Bedouin-looking motherfucker, you know, like, I love this shit. If I have to translate that, it's like one Bedouin going, I love Metal Gear so much, this is this shit.
You know, I think the closest analogy, like, to the west of a Bedouin would be a redneck.
It would be a redneck, or like if you're Latino, like Chola or something like that, you know. So, yeah, it's our, like, you know,
they're our rednecks.
Yeah, they are our rednecks, and you love them to death. A lot of them are just really pure-hearted and fair. And
we're talking about the guys who are like actual like Bedouins, not the act.
No,
guys.
the real. I'm talking about the real shit. Like,
there's way too many of the act.
Oh my god,
Bahrain.
Yeah, there is in Bahrain because there's
because they idealize that thing, but they don't want to actually do any of the lifestyle.
No, I can spot a Bedouin. Do you know why I could spot a Bedouin? There's one difference: is that somebody who is a real Bedouin has such a true curiosity. There's a heartfelt curiosity. It doesn't matter what it is you're into. If you're putting on something that's anime, if you're just watching a movie, if you're playing Warhammer 40K, the curiosity is brimming. Like I remember, I think it was my dad who kind of gave an example of this once. Is that Bedouins when they like kind of welcome anybody that's outside of the tribe to the tent or any area that they're living in, and a British guy might pass by with a car, and if he's never seen a car before, and we're talking about like 1940s, 20s. Nowadays they know what cars are, right?
I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah, but like if we're talking about 1920s and 40s to that period, the old days, the old school Bedouins, they would just be fascinated. They would not be afraid of the unknown. The whole mentality is I would invite you and welcome you into my tent, and the hospitality of Arabs came also not just because of benevolence, to wanting to share my hearth with you, and the fire, the coffee, all that. It was also to find out everything there is to know about you, this brimming curiosity, because knowledge was power to them, right? If I knew what you were, I could tell if you were an enemy or not. I could tell whether or not you're a threat, what kind of technology you have, any advances I can kind of pillage and take and for myself, or make alliances with you, right? I could marry one of my daughters to you and then gain an advantage in life. So Bedouins, at their heart, they're unafraid of new things because they're just dying to talk to people. They're dying to know what's in the outside world, right?
Right.
But a lot of the modern Bedouism is all about, the Arab identity.
It's like, I am like there's no one better than us, and we don't need anyone else, and we don't need to, interact with other people.
Yes.
We're not even going to speak in any other language or any other dialect.
Exactly.
Other than this fake that I picked up from television.
It is a lot of safe play, I would say.
It's a lot of over hyper masculine.
Yeah.
Look at me, be it like the manliest man that has ever manned.
Well, it's the easy way out. It's like, I'm gonna buy this persona. I'm gonna buy into it. Here's the kit, right? These are the sunglasses. They're oversized. They're Gucci. Here's the very Arab agal or qatra or shmag or whatever it is you're into.
Get yourself the biggest car to compensate for your penis.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. Right? I drive an SUV, so I don't know what that's supposed to say, but in any case, the guys are misrepresented, I feel, in the culture, and it's become tied into this what is our Arab identity, right? And I just wish I'd see a lot more of the guys I grew up with that brimming curiosity. So a lot of them were they got hooked on anime, man. There was a solidarity between them and the Japanese, because for some reason they would look to all the other cultures in the world, whether you're, from the UK and the Americas or something else. And maybe the Americans have a bit more of something, to kind of understand for Saudis. East and West Coast are both liberal. The center is conservative. This is there's a lot of similar undertones there. But for a lot of them, Japan was the answer, because Japan was like, look at their advanced technology. Look at all the philosophical stuff they discuss in their anime. Look at all the chibi, cutesy they'd fall in love with.
Waifus for days.
So there's the flip of that spectrum, the both sides, right? But at least the Japanese did represent for them, a culture and a people that wanted to progress into the future, but retain their identity, right? Now, that is, like I said, an obsession that we as Arabs have. How can we move ahead and still retain our identity? Now, I made an argument in the first podcast where I was saying that there really is no one identity. Nobody really represents us, because we've all grew up with different backgrounds, different experiences, different kind of families, different systems of belief, left and right. You know what I mean?
Even among individuals, you ask someone what defines you, and you get a different answer each day, depending on how bad a day they've had.
Exactly. It's shocking to me sometimes, but I kind of feel like there's hope now, because we're seeing I don't know if it's globalization, man.
It plays a huge part in everything, man.
But yeah, you see it. Like I was saying the other day that there is the kids growing up in China, kids growing up in Korea, kids growing up in Bahrain or India, whoever it is. I can talk to any of these cross-culture kids from developing worlds or otherwise, right? Whether you're from Scandinavia or anywhere else. And I see the same heritage. Like I see they grew up with Silverhawks, they grew up with Thundercats, they grew up with the Saturday morning cartoon shows, all of them. They grew up with this or that, or the memes here, the Chuck Norris jokes there. It's
universal. The pop culture is universal that way.
So what do you think about people that say, that's Western influence, that's the contamination of our culture? And even a lot of Westerners think that's the case. Like, to me, I never felt that way.
No, it's like I said, it's a universal thing. People love escapism, no matter what country or culture or identity there is. Yeah. And the better it is, the more popular it will get. And the more popular it gets, the more widespread it will be, it's more accessible. Right, yeah. It's a mix and match of all these different elements that would make a character like Spider-Man more recognizable than what's it called, the local the comic here, Majid.
Majid, yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Although don't Majid.
No.
A lot of people love Majid.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's more accessible and
It
more
is,
well
yeah.
known
Yeah.
than that
Yeah.
because of all these different factors.
Exactly. It's kind of fueled by international consciousness. I feel for the longest time, especially in that kind of culture, you don't get the sense that it is Western or American or anything. There are like hints and some stuff here and there, but
What, Captain America is in America?
well, like there's small stuff that kind of changes over time. Superman is no longer like a citizen of the U.S. and like there's stuff to that extent, but yeah, there, like I said, there's hints of it there and there. That's still, this is an American thing. But I feel like it's become a global kind of mythos, right?
And I feel like a lot of that has to do
I use
with
the big word mythos.
mythos.
Well, small word with big connotations.
I feel like a lot of that is, especially the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of diversifying within the cast of these worlds and everything like that.
Yeah.
Which speaks a lot to people everywhere. If you see like the new Miss Marvel is I'm not entirely sure. I think she's Pakistani.
Is she?
Yeah,
I didn't know this.
yeah, she's like that. Imagine like a reader from Pakistan seeing
Right.
that, and like it instantly clicks with them.
Yeah. But is it forced, or do you feel like there is
From
like...
what I've read, it was completely natural.
That's good.
It wasn't like it felt like a very well written story. I feel like you can get away with almost anything if you write
Yeah.
it well enough, and they've done it really, really well. And she's a very popular character.
Yeah.
Kamala Khan.
I didn't know this. I'm going to look this up. But you know what I can immediately tell you off the bat that would probably surprise a lot of white people out there? They'd think that, for example, having that character in there would be, kind of a reaching out, a solidarity to the East. And here's somebody that represents different cultures, is not just white or all American or anything else. You got to love them, right? And then they might be surprised that there's still some people that are still offended, like, you don't understand. Or the guy you got to write about this chick, this Miss Marvel, he's not real Pakistani. He's like a chicken nugget Pakistani.
It's like they don't understand. How could they? Like,
Yeah.
there's always going to be outrage over anything.
Because
there are people who live for outrage.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether or not it makes sense, whether it's worth it or not. Because it's become another subculture, outrage culture. They're ready to pick a fight over the stupidest thing.
Well, we've been having, like I said, this fight for years, which is like everybody trying to one-up everybody else about their Arabness and who's actually more Arab than anybody else. I've had some Pakistanis, especially some Pakistanis that are more hardcore conservative, that would see a Saudi like me, a bit more on the moderate / liberal side of things. For them, far liberal left, and they would see me as kind of like, oh, they have to preach to me. Mm-hmm. But they wouldn't preach to like a Bahraini or UAE or they who shall not be named. None of those guys. They would not preach to them because, like, heresy, we will not speak of them. Starts with a Q, ends with an R.
Shut up.
We will not speak to them because they won't speak to them because for them, Saudis should be better than that. Mm-hmm. You guys are you're the center. You're the center of Islam. You're the pinnacle of Islam. You guys sent all a lot of people don't know, a lot of the teachings that we have that's like Wahhabi teachings from Saudi, a lot of them like transposed and started off being studied and kind of like jointly spread around in Pakistan. The Pakistanis took our influence and really hardcore believe in it. They're the number one fans. And we're kind of the guys that wrote the doctrine, for how we interpret things. And we're like, oh, we don't really believe in it that much, I was like, yeah, just take it easy,
Yeah, grain of salt.
Yeah, like Saudis are, as conservative as we are, you'd be surprised how actually, like, how easygoing people are. Mm-hmm. We're not, like, the average everyday Saudis is pretty much like live and let live, Mm-hmm. It's just when you're in the public view or you're in public media that you want to go out and say, I'm this much of an Arab, I'm this much of a Muslim. All of you will follow me, and if you do not follow this doctrine, for you have failed your kind.
And you should be burned as a heretic.
You will be burned. Well, stoned. Burning is haram. Okay? Yeah.
Depending on your definition of stoning.
Yes. So yeah, that was a lot of the a lot of maybe the kind of the factionalism or factionism. Is it factionism? A lot of the inner factions that are kind of fighting within themselves about
like
the identity.
There's
right?
there's definitely a schism in terms of like what the overall identity is supposed to be, what the ideal identity, and it differs from person to person, country to country.
Yeah,
and it will never be solved.
But do you feel like you got a lot of that growing up in Bahrain? Like for you, like personally, is that experience there? Or?
Personally,
yeah,
no, because I was I didn't hang out with a lot of people who felt strongly about that.
But was that selective, or is it just happened to be like
it just happened to be because the people that I hang out with were like as much a chicken nugget as I am.
Right. See that
the very few people who like felt strongly about that, I would just be like, yeah, okay.
See, that's the thing. I kind of maybe at one age, like maybe around 20 or 16 to 20, I would have envied you guys in Bahrain and a lot of places in the Gulf that are a bit more liberal than where I grew up in Saudi. I was envious of the fact that you guys could be selective. And, everybody would let everybody live in that sense. And there was no real nitpicking about who hung out with who, except when it comes to the average everyday high school bullshit, forget that shit. But from that side of it, today I look back at my experiences in Saudi, kind of the forced, because you want to hang out with people that share the same interests, right? You're desperate to find somebody that's into Hooked on a Ken or, Kenshin, or if you're desperate to find somebody that's into RTS games, StarCraft, Red Alert, whatever it is you were there doing, you want to meet and build a community and have some friends and feel like you shared a bond with people. And desperation would kick in. You were so desperate to just be with another person that thought like you that you would not give a shit what their background was or what their religious beliefs were or anything else. So a lot of the times the groups I was hanging out with in Saudi, you'd find like really like vampire and rice loving goth heads that are hanging around with full bearded Wahhabi, short thobe conservatives that are into like, anime and One Piece and all that. And they'd just get along because there was this kind of like common understanding that, guys, we're all nerds and geeks. Like, it doesn't matter what your religious belief is. We're all kind of like isolated in our bubble and we're desperate to kind of hang out and find other people that want the same things and share the same passion. So forget about everything else. Let's make compromise happen. It forced us to kind of get to know each other. It forced us to bridge that divide. And I feel like that's a lot of the rest of the Middle East might have missed out on that, I feel.
Funny enough, my experience was the exact polar like opposite of yours, where around like senior year high school, start of uni, like a lot of the people that I did that had those like similar interests with, I drifted away from, and the group of friends that I got stuck with, and I use the term got stuck with very deliberately because I had nothing in common with those guys. I would hang out and I had no idea what to talk about. They were talking about like sports and shit and cars.
Right,
and I'm sitting there going,
how do I make this work? I don't know anything about Messi.
Like they talk about video games. They talk about FIFA.
Yeah.
And I'm tearing out my hair here.
I know. But that was like, that was the way to kind of like break through, and it's tough. Right. Because you know that when like a lot of people back then, it was just so easy to dismiss things, right? But when you have the desperation kick in, it's a different story. Now in Bahrain, I feel like when I came here during high school, it was your story exactly. People were so cliquey, and I didn't know how to break, the barriers and get to. I didn't even have the goddamn confidence. I was dealing with the fact that oh my god, there are girls here. How can I deal with the fact there are girls here? That was like my biggest concern. I was like,
I feel like we need an episode just for that.
Yeah,
just like how you navigated.
Oh my god,
high school and that transition.
It was so hard, man. It was like I go there because I was crying and bitching for years about the fact that I don't know where I stand in society. I don't know who I am in life. And then maybe I fit more with Western culture. And then I go there, I'm like, oh know. I'm awkward here. People know things I don't know.
They're very loud and social. I don't know how to deal with this.
Oh yeah. It was tough. Like it was tough for me, but I can imagine like even in Bahrain seeing the mentality here and how people were that cliquey. I wonder from your perspective, did you feel like when did you see it change? Like nowadays geek culture is readily accepted, even if you're any kind of geek, whatever it is you're into, right? When did that goddamn critical mass happen for you?
I feel like it had different timelines for different things. Harry Potter marked the revolution of people reading and getting into fantasy around here. Because everyone read f***ing Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And after that, it was for like the comic books and the comic book movies. I'd say the popularity of The Dark Knight and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Those were huge. Everyone started talking about comic book movies.
Right.
All of a sudden, And in terms of video games, as much as I hate to say it, COD.
Really? Call of Duty did that for
like COD would just brought together that sort of those guys who are just sort of like, oh, I like to shoot stuff and I don't.
Yeah, but weren't those guys always around? They've been around since GoldenEye. They've been around since all those first person. For those of you guys who don't know video gaming in that sense, first person shooters. You've heard of Call of Duty. You've probably seen Halo. And to me, there are the mainstream introduction 101 to gaming games, right? And they're not to say that they're for beginners or noobs or anything else. They're just the
quintessential video game stuff.
Exactly. Like if you were not into gaming but you played GoldenEye, your skills are transferable later on to Halo, and then after that to COD, after that to anything else, right? So it is something that I feel like did gain a lot of traction, and the types I'm talking about and you're talking about do play it. Like,
you know why?
No.
Online multiplayer. It would sort of fill that sort of gap where they could just sort of pick up a game, play for a couple of hours, shoot people, and then drop it. They don't have to worry about story. They don't have to worry about characters and all that stuff. It was just a fun time killer. And that's what a good multiplayer game is, a fun time killer.
Right.
And for those people who, I hate using terms like these, casual gamers.
Yeah, it's a bit elitist on our side.
It's very elitist. It's very condescending, and I don't mean it that way.
A lot of PC players out there, console gamers is what you're trying to say, sir.
Shut up, mustard race. Go spend all your money on Steam.
Yes, I'm part of the master race. No, I'm sorry. I have to admit, it's superior in every way.
It is. There's no arguing that. But get off your fucking high horse. What I mean is those guys who would buy one game a year, 2 games. It would be like a sports game and a shooting game.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And
Winning 11 or FIFA. That's it. Or Pro Evolution, basically.
That sort of kicked in with the rise of online multiplayer.
Yeah.
With how easy it is to just jump in a game, play 1 or 2 rounds, and then do whatever the it is that you do.
True. Yeah.
And I feel like that was a big part of the what you said. What was the phrase you used? Maximum
the critical mass. Like things just kind of got so heavy, and so many people are involved in it.
It became part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, there was a tipping point where that just became, well, you can't ostracize those people because compared to a lot of people from the older generation, you're playing something very inaccessible to them. You know what I mean? Like you might understand COD and you kind of think it's pretty straightforward, but for somebody that come from my dad's generation or anything else, you look like me. You look like a guy who plays Warhammer. Do you know what I mean? There's no difference in their eyes. There's no difference.
There's no difference.
Yeah. So
but those things help with the accessibility and the sort of general understanding of nerd culture being part of everyday life.
Right.
And now Marvel is one of the biggest the Marvel Cinematic Universe is one of the biggest movie franchises in the world.
Right,
it's
right.
a f***ing juggernaut.
And that being said, do you feel like you kind of use those skills, the transferable language skills, making analogies about movies and games and bringing that to forefront? You feel like that's got it increased also in your workplace?
Man, let me tell you how many times I've gotten away with assignments and stuff for as far back as high school. I remember writing something for my economy class based on Metal Gear Solid about the war economy.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I
No,
did.
you didn't.
Yes, I fucking did.
This is like one of my friends, Better, kind of did an analysis, I think, about Warcraft's economy online or something. Like, I can't remember what it was. But yeah, that's pretty hardcore.
In uni, I did like often write papers about comic books in terms of literature and their effects on and their influences from literature. And video games, the evolution of gaming and popular culture.
Yeah.
And I would take whatever excuse I can get to utilize my vast knowledge of unimportant things.
To make that kind of flesh out and make sense to other people as well, or not?
I don't know how well received it was, but, you know, I managed to get away with it for those courses. So.
Well, like, I can relate, because I had a big chunk of my life whenever I'm speaking to some of my friends that I just use analogies to describe things in life. Anything that regards improving your skill set or improving your mental capacity to understand and absorb things, I saw it as experience points, right? So a lot of the RPG mechanics, for those of you who don't know, role-playing games, World of Warcraft, you've probably heard that before. So there's a lot of statistics being run in the background where it kind of calculates every little thing you do and awards you experience points. And through those experience points, you'd level, right? Now, with those games, especially, you know, a lot of those RPG elements would transfer into strategy games, basically war simulation games, and, you know, anything from adventure games to pretty much today, every other game, like even FPS games have them. And that kind of built in you a strategic mind. So you would always like be like, okay, well, I want to level this skill up first, because this would give me more ability to survive, and then I want the damage, you know, I want more damage later on because I'm playing, you know, the end game, not the short game. And you tend to use those terminologies, you know what I mean, to kind of like...
Let me tell you about a subreddit called Outside.
What is this now?
It's a subreddit where they see the outside world as a video game.
Like as
this reality is a video game.
Well, they might be right though.
And you know everything they do is like, you know, it's a massive like open world RPG with incredible graphics but really boring gameplay.
Well, but is it an ongoing joke or is
it's an ongoing joke?
So it's not really people that believe it.
No,
though,
no,
right?
It's an ongoing joke that people like, you know, semi take seriously. There's a lot of jokes about it. There's a lot of like, you know, they try to break it down into like, you know, leveling systems and things like that.
Or like when you go to India, it's running on ATI or something. That's not a dig on India. Might be more of a dig on ATI than it is anything else, guys. I'm sorry, but yeah, like if you're using those kinds of analogies, like for a subreddit, I understand it's an ongoing rampant joke, right? Mm-hmm. But somebody like myself, I felt like there's a bunch of people out there that might be using video game philosophy to break down life into understandable chunks. And it made things clearer for me, right? So even today when I'm trying to be productive and stuff, when I'm writing in my little bullshit productivity journal, I look at them like they're quests, you know, do the goddamn laundry, do this, do that, finish this. Oh, I didn't get enough XP today, man. God damn it.
Well, I feel like that wouldn't work for me because I'm that kind of player who would just go off on their own side quest. Like,
yeah,
they would just wander off into the wild.
Well,
and ignore every quest, everything.
No,
you know, following a dog or something.
See, you're not systematic then, right?
No.
You're not. See, I am. I can't. There's a bunch of you out there that you're this type of player, right? I'm going to explain who you are right now. You walk into a room, there's 3 doors, and you go, why? And you open one of those doors, and it's like a huge room, right? And you don't know if the other 2 rooms are going to be like just side bullshit rooms, or they're actual like, come here and find out if there's another choice in the story type thing. So your OCD goes into overdrive, and you're thinking, why did you give me choice?
Now, see, if I'm in any of those situations where, you know, I got to the end of the dungeon, but there's this room, like, you know, a few levels behind that I didn't go into because I thought this was a side room.
Yeah.
So I backtrack, go all the way there, die, hate myself, go back, figure out what that side room was, find out it was an empty room, so hate myself even more, then leave.
But you can't. But then you are a completionist in that way.
Especially for RPGs, I want to get as much loot and like experience and things
as
like
possible.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, because you know it's why leave.
Right.
But I'm not in the completionist and sort of like, okay, I need to collect all the boxes and all the like the feathers in Assassin's Creed and all those letters, and it's like if I see it, I'm gonna try to get it.
Right.
But I'm not gonna go out of my way to look up a guide and see where all of them are. And
To me, the worst is like when I can't handle it if it's tied to story. Even
Oh,
if it's
God, yeah.
bullshit, I can't. I have to. There's because I was like, okay, but I'm missing out on some aspect of the game that
to get the true ending, you must find all the eggs.
Yeah, I can't. But it's like this is because I have to say this is what the writer intended. Do you know what I mean? If I don't do it, then he
No.
just like I can't judge him anymore.
The thing is,
I have to
it's
do my due-
never,
yeah.
it's never the writer who decides, oh yeah, you got to find all the eggs in order to get the
Right. It's
find
somebody
the
that
egg.
breaks
It's-
it apart. And,
It's
yeah.
whoever, like, it's the game director's choice to, like, okay, we need to stretch out a couple of more hours in order to justify charging full release for
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So
You
they
know,
chop it up and stuff, yeah.
$60. Let's say, yeah, you get this, and then you pay for the DLC to get the super secret ending.
You're not helping me at all. Like, I now it makes it worse because I feel like the writer is like innocent in all of this, and he just wants me to see the whole story. And this game director, game developer, lead game dev has just kind of.
It
Like-
really depends on what kind of game and which what's it called, company produces it.
Right.
I mean, you don't expect anything good out of EA.
Well-
You've seen what they did to Andromeda, right?
No, let's not get into that. We're just gonna end up going to more of a tangent. Let's get back to like something relatable to the average person out there. For you, like speaking of analogies, right? When I'm using those gaming terms like experience points and all that, there was a long time where I felt like these references just not going over people's heads constantly.
That was my entire university experience. Me saying some sort of reference and then blank stares. No one just like,
Just
really?
people walking away.
How have you not seen Lord of the Rings, people? Come on!
It was just tumbleweeds and Falcon in there.
It's hard.
Let's not get sued by Blizzard, please. I don't know. That sentence might be actually trademarked for all I know.
Oh, come on.
They might do it, man.
Come on.
You don't know. You don't know. But yeah, that kind of like a progression. When did it change for you? Because for me, I was like thinking, I think it was, what is it? I think it was Lord of the Rings or no, it was Warcraft. Definitely World of Warcraft, because it was the first time a bunch, because you had MMOs before that. You had EverQuest, you had Phantasy Star Online, you had a bunch of other stuff people played that were, massively. MMOs are massively multiplayer online RPGs. Well, MMORPGs. So that's for people that don't know that. And World of Warcraft made that accessible to everybody.
Mhm.
So it didn't just make them accessible to this highly addictive game that was all about bringing people together, going on quests, and being a completionist, being the best in your server, being the best in the world. It was also about this kind of like convergence of storytelling, convergence of this heritage that comes from Dungeons and Dragons and all the RPG mechanics, the convergence of gaming as well into one game, the convergence of online players and competitive mentalities. So it brought together all kinds of people. It used to be like, if you were an RTS guy, you had that mentality and you were just staying within your subculture. And if you were a Warhammer, tabletop guy, or a D&D tabletop guy, you were staying within your subculture. And nowadays it's kind of like, the subcultures are blending and merging into one, and this like Darwinian kind of evolution is kicking in, and people are stealing from one another, or not stealing, kind of absorbing the best out of one another. And that, to me, made it, especially with like the rampant casuals that came in to freaking casuals ruining our MMOs.
Filthy casuals.
Toss them over into the seas and let them boil. No, that was,
Reginald, I've
Yeah.
been touched by a filthy casual.
that was my guild leader. Yes. How dare they?
How dare they?
Yeah, it's having those people that were just everyday people kind of come into the game. It blended a lot of things together and made it so easy to talk about movies, talk about shows, talk about references, and talk about things we shared in common that you wouldn't expect to kind of happen. And it was fun. It was really weird meeting other Arabs online. I don't know if you've had that experience before.
I can't remember any of those. Until recently with playing Overwatch and stuff like that.
Right.
Because the servers are very localized.
Yeah.
But going back 5 years ago, World of Warcraft and those MMOs, I would hardly ever find any other Arab.
Oh, I did all the time because I got good information on which servers to kind of join that were people kind of, especially with servers, people tend to kind of migrate they gravitate towards the most successul servers with the biggest names, right? And Arabs tend to get, we have a mentality of getting ahead, like the Bedouin mentality. They have technology I want. They have secrets. Let me go see how I can take them. And that brimming curiosity kind of, no, it's the reason we kind of, saved democracy and saved science and saved all these things during the golden age of Islam, because we wanted that stuff. We wanted to figure out how your tech worked. So in those kind of server migrations and gravitation towards the best of the best, I noticed I would be in a server and a guild. And this was like a common story all throughout, where I'd meet somebody who's Saudi or something else, and I'll be like, oh, cool, another Saudi, right? And then I started regretting it instantly, right? Can you guess why?
Why?
All right, because the one key word of the day is going to be wasta, all right? Wasta is, how would we best describe this, Ghazi, to people that don't know? Nepotism. A more accessible word maybe to find for like the average everyday person. I would say nepotism, favors, and
having an in,
right? Your connections, wasta, the connection to the in crowd, the connection to success, favors given out, right? And a lot of these favors are it comes with an assumption. You're an Arab, I'm an Arab. We both are from the same country of Arabs. Therefore, our connection is stronger, say, than a Mediterranean Arab, right? And stronger even more than, say, a non-Arab. But still, if we're Muslim, we're strong, but not as strong as, say, it keeps going up in degrees, right? So if
there's levels to it.
There's levels to how close we are as buddies, right? And it's assumed. They assume if you're like me, you're from my background, you're going to take care of me, bro. That's the idea. It's not about principles and what it is you stand for, or whether or not we're kind of both competitive, or both, wanting to just have fun, or both, are cool with this or that. It's about that. And that scared the living shit out of me, because I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't hate you guys. I like you guys, but you're embarrassing me in front. You kind of, because they just, it's not their fault, man. They'd see me like being an officer in a guild, or in a competitive game or something, and he's one of us. He's out there with the Europeans, and if I don't share in every belief system they might have, even if it adds to the corruption of the system in whole, therefore I have sold out my kind. How dare you, heretic, heresy,
traitor.
Yeah, I was always stuck. I told you, man. I don't know where I stand. I have no idea where I stand. And I think there's a bunch of people out there the same way. And you know what? I say people that do know where they stand. Right? I'm not going to be held accountable to your flags. I'm not going to be held accountable to your imaginary lands, man.
Yeah, tell them, man.
Screw you and your lands, man.
Man.
It's totally not who I am. I'm very supportive and loving of my country, and this is wholeheartedly me endorsing my state and my Arabness.
Please don't sue us.
Please don't kill us. They're not gonna kill us. They don't. Ghazi just he just looked at the door to see if somebody walked in. I think it was maybe my wife on the other side.
I think my black Jeep senses are tingling.
Yeah. Because statistically speaking, we're going to get one death threat for this. Do you know what I mean? At some point.
I would be very happy to get a death threat. It
would mean that flattering, right?
It means I did something.
Right.
So I did or said something that affected someone on such an emotional level that I have not been able to do in 20 years of writing poetry.
Is it just the poetry? Is it just also your frustration in journalism? Just the ability to just follow the system, and you have to kind of you have to stay low. You have to be reasonable, and you don't want to take sides. You don't want to be outrageous. You don't want to follow the train of thought here that it's all about this is not fair. This is unjust. You want to just get a job, make it work, and not lose your position in society, right?
With journalism, it's a lot easier because ideally what you want to do is tell the news,
right,
as much and as a fair and balanced way as possible, without taking sides or without anything. And when it comes to stories that are related to people and their, their stories, their suffering, whatever. You want to tell their story as well. Want to have like their successes or their struggles known to people.
Yeah.
And that to me, those kind of personal stories where I get to talk about, someone who has been doing art for like 20 years, who finally won an award,
Right.
or like I just wrote an article about this kid called Said Hashim. You might know him as Tekken Master.
Oh yeah, this
Yeah.
is like one of the world champions in Bahrain.
He is an amazing like Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat player.
These are fighting games, like arcade fighting games on the consoles. Again, we brought back gaming for those of you that don't know. But
And he has been like taking part in tournaments on international levels, going up against the best of the best
Right.
on an international level. And it is so cool to share those stories with people, even if they're like, the people reading the newspaper don't really care about that. But seeing like, oh yeah, this kid from Bahrain is doing those things on an international level.
Right,
He's
right.
taking his hobby, making a living out of it, and putting Bahrain on the map.
Yeah, and I can imagine as well. There's a lot of topics that, to both you and me and our backgrounds, are very off limits to want to publicize and be taking one side or another about. So these kinds of stories always feel like our real outlet.
Mm-hmm.
They're the things we want to focus on. They're the things that we're proud of. They're the things that we're like, there's more to the story than just the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like we're joking about politics and religion all the time, but it's not really our passion. The passion has been what this really whole episode is about, is that we're just like everybody else. And I'm going to find them probably with the other people as well when I'm talking to Tariq or any of the other artists. If you're talking about, a music creator or a content creator or, I got a guy, Mohamed Dosari. He's like a kite surfer here in Bahrain.
Mm-hmm.
And he started up his own little business, and kite surfing wasn't really a big thing here. And he brought it in kind of like, well, he was part of the original community of people that brought it in. And he made it into a business, made it into a community, tried to support himself and get it running. And when you see him, bridging barriers and divides to get this thing to kind of like penetrate the mindset that's here.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like if I was living in Saudi, you'd see a lot of like people that would be turned off by the idea of what is this new and like unusual, mysterious thing. And
Like I said, people don't like things that are new and trendy.
yeah, unless you're Bedouin, and then you're like wholeheartedly into it because you're bored as shit.
It's fucking hipsters, man.
No, they are. They are our hipsters. But yeah, those stories and those people, I feel like they're the ones that we can feel either like we fell in love with them, or have passion with their stories and passion with their like what they've been able to achieve, and at the same time, they're an outlet for our frustration and rage because we're like, well, we can't do anything else in that side. we can't talk about those things. We can't talk about this or that or they who shall not be named.
God damn it, man.
Well, I think we're over our time right now. We're a bit over an hour, I think. Yeah. So we've got more episodes to come with Ghazi, and I really like this session. There's a lot to go over here, a lot to unpack. A lot of stories and details that we might have brushed over. And I apologize if we did have technical issues. I can hear the pop every now and then. I can hear my sound kind of fading in and out. And you can see the inexperience and a lot of cringeworthy moments, I'm sure.
What? No, never.
How dare you, sir?
How dare you? We are professional actors.
Actors!
Pure thespians here.
You can tell you're Arab because you said thespian. Not thespian. Thespian.
Thespian.
Yeah, so thank you guys for kind of downloading, tuning in, or subscribing, and stay tuned for the coming episodes. This has been Khalid Al-Dosri and Ghazi AlShehabi here at Bedouin Banter.
Good.